So welcome everyone. Thanks for your time and coming here. My name is Gautam Dhameja and I lead consulting at BigchainDB. Today's workshop is primarily going to be about, so the concept or the idea arose from the place where we wanted to do a workshop on educating our community members about how to build applications on BigchainDB. But the use case for these applications, the use case for this workshop, or I should say the storyline for this application was primarily not coming up very well. So we decided to do TCRs for BigchainDB. So the application is actually TCR, underlying platform is going to be BigchainDB, and then that's what we are going to cover in this workshop. So the high-level agenda that I have for this workshop is we will go through the concepts of token curated registries, what they are meant for, and some specifics around them. We'll also be covering some brief concepts around how you get started with building BigchainDB apps. What is the SDK, where is it available on the internet, and how to use it, how does an typical D app on BigchainDB look like. And finally, we will be combining the first two concepts to reach or to create a application which shows a working TCR on BigchainDB. So primarily, while this is still being called as a workshop, I do not have a working session over here. It's more like a content delivery, but all the content and code will be available for you on public GitHub to check it out and contribute towards it later on. Okay, so let's get started. The first point around here and the first subject that we have is token curated registries for today, and the concept actually came late last year from Mr. Mike Golden. He has blog post on Medium, and then this is also available as a paper, but I will still call it a paper because it is very well defined in terms of specifics and the concepts. So this paper came late last year, and it defined how token curated registries should be built for decentralized systems powered by tokens and for community curation. Now the use case over there was primarily driven by the network called @chain, where you can actually propose domain names or publishers who should be basically put on a registry or a list which is whitelisted for putting ads and banners for these publishers. So that was the primary use case from Mike's perspective, and and to solve that particular use case, he defined token curated registries. But over this period of time, there have been a lot of generalizations on this concept, and now it is being used for almost any list that can be curated by the community based on tokens. So we did a couple of projects with some of our customers at BigchainDB Consulting about data governance. We generalized the concept a bit where Dimi published a blog post called Stake Machines. That is nothing but just a generalization of TCRs. And then later on, Trent published another blog post called Layered TCRs, where you have different stages in a TCR, how you promote item from one stage to other still being whitelisted, and so on. So there has been a lot that is going on in this space in the last 1 year. But in today's session, we are going to stick to the real primitives of token curated registries exactly. So, like the term in itself, token curated registry, it's kind of sounds a little complicated. At the first time when you hear it, it's like, okay, there's something sounds very complex and complicated. What is it? So this is nothing really complicated. It's a very simple concept about a list. This list is something that you value because the contents of this list are important or you can say relevant to you for consumption. So, and now because these contents are important and relevant, who should be able to make that judgment that whether these content is important or not, whether it should be on the list or not. If this is being done by one single person, then it becomes an opinion from one person. It may or may not be received, or welcomed in the community. It may also be biased towards some things or some other things. But if this is an opinion coming from a collective, coming from the community, based on something at stake, then it becomes a little more relevant. It becomes a little more valuable, because ultimately people are putting something behind it which is valuable to them. So ultimately the concept coming into picture is that you have something of value, let's call it a token, and you are putting that value behind your opinion. When you say you are going to curate something, you are basically putting your opinion and into a list. So basically that's what token curated registry is. You are putting something of value behind your opinion collectively as a community. So primarily what we have in TCRs, and I will be using TCR and token curated registry interchangeably for the rest of the workshop because it's easy. So pardon me for that. But what we have in TCRs primarily is there is a list, which is the container of your opinion. We have functions or actions that the community can take for curation. These are several set of functions. And finally, we have a token to back. To do anything on this list, you have to stake some tokens. So that's where the token comes into picture. So let's first talk about the registry itself. So it's very simple binary listing. Either an item is on this registry or it is not on this registry. There are no stages in between, like it may or may not be on the registry, it can be or cannot be on the registry, or something sort of that. It is 0 or 1 mapping over here, that it is either there or not. So for example, a list of, and I'll take the example from Mike's blog post itself. So a list about college universities where the graduates can pay their student debt in 10 years. So this can be like if you are in a school where you and this is based on general average statistics over a few years, that if you are in this school you have paid your debt in 10 years. If you are not in this school, then you haven't. So those schools are coming into this registry. So it's pretty binary over there, that there is no clause or condition that okay, if you do this or you do that, then you will be able to pay your debt. So this school should be there. So there are no ifs or buts over there. It's binary, black and white basically. Then we have curation. So to have this to fill or to populate this registry or list, the community will be doing some set of actions which are basically divided into 3 main items. Like there has to be a proposal that this item should be on the list. This proposal, now again, like in case of AdChain, this was a domain name for a publisher. In other generalized use cases, the projects that we have done, it can be any proposal basically. For example, a set of community member want to define a process. So this can be an item in the process that we should be doing this and not like that. And then that becomes a proposal. And then finally, once you have all these list of proposals, that becomes an actual process in this particular scenario. Then you have challenges. While you are proposing something that should be on the list, there will be people who will not be agreeing with you, and they might want these items not to be on the list. So that's where challenge comes into picture, that you cannot, this item should not be on the list. This is the 0 side of the binary listing. And finally, voting, the rest of the community members can come in and support either 1 or 0 by their votes, that I support this item should be on the list, or I don't support that this item should be on the list, and that's basically a vote. All of these require stake, and that's where the token comes into picture. So to do anything, you need tokens. So one, we are very clear that we need to put some stake behind all of these actions. But why don't we do this using simple fiat currency or Ether or Bitcoin? Why do we need a token for this registry? That's a question which is important, because not everything needs a token. But here we do need a token, because the primary purpose of having a token in TCR is basically the incentive system or the economy around this list should be driven by the values or the contents of this list and not by anything else. Because if we are doing it with fiat or with other crypto tokens, the actual value of this token or the overall economy around this list can be impacted by other factors, like what is the value of that particular token because of something else. So there are external factors coming into the picture which should not be there when you are actually looking at the incentive system around a list. It should be directly proportional or tightly coupled with the contents of the list and how they are being curated. So that's the primary purpose for having a token inside a token curated registry. Now, I wanted to spend a little more time on the token and crypto economics of a TCR. So, and this is just a diagrammatic representation of what's there in Mike's blog post. Again, most of this content is anyway driven from what's there in the blog post. I'm just putting out here and explaining things using my slides. And the second more important thing I want to point out is the Circle of Crypto Economic Activity by Joel Monegro. So we had this workshop of token engineering during the consensus conference in May this year, when when Trent actually bootstrapped the token engineering community, and that's where this I came across this term called Circle of Crypto Economic Activity. And basically what it defines is that the relationship between miners, investors, and users, how they are actually related to each other, what are they exchanging between themselves to fuel a crypto system. While that diagram doesn't directly map over here, but it gives me a lot of reference to actually take some inputs from there and put it something like this, that there are primarily three actors in a token curated registry or TCR. In between, like there's this TCR, and then we have applicants. These are the people who are basically doing the proposals, and they need value or they need stake for putting in proposals. Then we have curators who are basically challenging or curating this list, like well, you should not be there on the list or you should be there on the list, voters and others. Then we have consumers who are actually interested in consuming this list, who are basically interested in giving value to the items in this list. For example, if there is a list about something which is not so relevant, there will be less consumers. And if there are less consumers, that means the content of the list is not important. So there will be less applicants, because I wouldn't want to apply for my business or my listing in something that doesn't have value. So I will not need any tokens for that particular list. So if the contents have value, then there will be more applicants. If there are more applicants, then there is more demand of this particular token, so the value becomes more. If there are more applicants, then the curators are basically incentivized to curate this list in a way that it is becoming valuable for the consumers. So that's basically the circle of crypto economic activity over here for TCRs, where curators, consumers, and applicants are basically using their actions. They are primarily driving the value of the token. Now, if this token was something else, its value would have been driven by something else as well. For example, in crypto market, if we take any other token like or cryptocurrency per se, like Ether or Bitcoin, their value is being driven by so many factors these days. Why would we want to influence the consumers and curators by that particular value driven, you can say, those external factors driving the value of other cryptocurrencies? So we want our own token in this particular field or in this particular registry, and that's where the token comes into picture. So primarily this is how these actors are actually driving the registry, and how the value of token basically becomes more or less depending upon the contents in the registry itself, and how they are being received and being valued by the consumers. But for now, is it clear, or do you have any questions at this moment? Basically, yes. Okay, cool.
Maybe one question.
Yes, please.
From experience, what are the key drivers of the value of a list? Is it I mean, we know it's kind of all happening at the same time, but ultimately it's the consumers that determine the value of a list.
Yes. So, for example, if let's say that if you are on that list, your business might increase by some value. So you want to be on that list, but your business.
This is all theory, right? Is there any evidence, data from existing registries?
So currently there is, in my knowledge, there is only one registry out there live, which is AdChain. There are other registries being developed and there are other theories being developed around it. But primarily the theory is pretty clear in itself that if the consumers want to look at this thing, and if it's as simple as that, there is a big hoarding in a city where top 10 brands are listed and consumers are going to go and buy them because it's more visible over there. So if you want to get your brand on that hoarding, you pay generally, but that hoarding is controlled by someone else. This is a hoarding which is being controlled by the whole community. So it has more value in that way.
And how do you signal to the consumers that this list has value? Is it because they look at the token price? And they say, okay, there's a lot of value behind that list because the intrinsic token is high?
It's basically more coming from the feedback mechanism. The voters who are voting and the curators who are curating this list are basically providing their feedback in that way, that if something is on that list that we are voting based on our experience. So if you are already on this list, that means something is good about you. You are whitelisted, and that basically consumers can go and check out. So consumers are primarily getting a pointer to, and if for example, if there are 10 items on this list and consumers are getting these pointers, okay, this looks good, this is being upvoted by the community and it has come into the list. Now they are going to go and try it out. If it doesn't work as per their expectations, then there will be opinion about this list and the overall value will go down. People will not be basically going and trying these things out.
So people can signal that they say okay, this entry was not good.
Yes, they can challenge it out during the registry when they are being proposed, and they can challenge it out even if it is whitelisted. So it can be challenged at any time.
So as a consumer, you can challenge a listee
if you have tokens.
If you have tokens.
If you buy
And then if you're a challenger and you buy the intrinsic tokens, you also become sort of like a curator because you have...
Yes. So there will be, if as soon as you want to challenge something, you become a curator in that regard, and there will be transitions in roles as well.
So the curator set is basically anybody who owns tokens. Is that correct?
If they are participating in the curating process, because if I am investor and I am holding some tokens, I might want to sell it to someone who is really interested in curating it, right, instead of holding it to them. And I can hold and just wait for the value to increase based on curation, yeah, but primarily curators are who are actively participating in the curation process.
How do you calculate the number of votes that are available in an election? Right, because like I'm assuming it's not one vote per token, because then if you have some investor who's holding 10% of your tokens, that's 10% of your voting pool. It's not. It's
completely weight driven actually. So it's how much stake you are putting behind your vote, or how much stake you are putting behind your challenges. You are getting returns proportionally to that. If you are in the winning side, so there are two sides obviously, because one side will be suggesting that this item should be there on the list, and the other side will be suggesting that this item should not be there on the list. Whoever wins, whatever the community decides, based on that you will be getting returns in proportion to what you have already staked.
No, but I guess I'm asking, like, how do you determine when an election is concluded? Is it like by a certain date you need to vote?
Yes, okay. Yes. I will come to that actually. Yeah. So, okay. So moving on. So we have we discussed in brief that we have some primitives around TCRs. So primarily we have curation functions, proposals, challenges, and votes, and then we have parameters. And this is exactly, Zach, what you just asked for. So I will just quickly skip this slide because we have talked about it a bit, but I will go detailed into the parameters. So what we have basically is, again, minimum deposits. So you should be putting some minimum deposit for a TCR, for your listing to be whitelisted in a TCR when you are applying. So basically your proposal is backed by stake, and this stake is measured by the minimum deposit. You have primarily deadline for challenging. So if if you are in the state where you have proposed something, then there is a deadline for block heights or epoch time in that way that before this, somebody should challenge it, otherwise it becomes automatically whitelisted because there have been no challenges. And then there is a deadline for voting where if there is a challenge comes into picture, then the community needs to vote. So this deadline, basically the commit period length, is where you will be voting and making sure that whatever your opinion is being communicated to the proposal. And that's how basically the overall dynamics of voting and challenging and deposits will work. So there are other parameters also. The reveal period length, where you can reveal some of the votes which are already committed. The percentage for dispensation and vote quorum. Basically, these from our applications, what we have presently developed for some of our projects, we have not looked into these parameters in detail because for sure they require a different kind of algorithm to be developed. I think Mike's implementation already has all of these because they are being used in AdChain. But what we implemented in our projects on BigchainDB, we have not used. That's why I've called it other parameters on the slide. But these are primarily the parameters which drive the overall dynamics of a TCR. Yes, please.
Is the min deposit in the intrinsic token?
Yes.
Or?
Yes.
It's always, so the deposit is always in the intrinsic token, because that's how you will be basically measuring the value of what you are proposing.
So imagine I'm a pizza shop and I want to be part of that list. Mm-hmm. Then I buy in these intrinsic tokens, meaning that I become a curator potentially?
So primarily you are proposing it, you are an applicant in this regard, that you have started a process of application, and then the curators will already be holding tokens and they will be challenging it if they want to.
So holding that token in that sense does not make me automatically a curator?
Not exactly, you can be an applicant as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes?
How do you decide how many tokens to generate or produce? Is there a kind of a limit or?
So most of the time there are the tokens are generated in a limited capacity, but then these parameters can change their value over a course of time to support how much should be the minimum deposit, maximum deposit, what's the supply and what's the demand based on that. For example, if the value of the token rises a lot, then you might want to reduce the minimum deposit based on the contents of the list. You can increase it as well if in case of different scenarios. So overall there will be fixed number of tokens, but the value of these parameters will change. The minimum deposit will change to give you flexibility on that. Okay, so these were primarily the concepts around TCR, like what they are, what exactly, how they are done, what are some of the implementation details and token economic details around them. So primarily that concludes the first section of this workshop, where we wanted to talk about TCRs and give an overview of what they are. The next section we will be talking about BigchainDB applications and this is going to be a fast-paced one because most of this documentation is available on the internet. Most of our applications are open sourced on what we have built. So I'll be giving you a walkthrough of what a BigchainDB application looks like and what are the SDK and resources available, and then we will deep dive into how we have implemented the TCR in the third one.
I have another question regarding TCRs.
Yes.
How do you generate trust in such an environment? Because just taking tokens doesn't mean that you are also building trust.
Because ultimately, if you are playing bad in the system, you are going to lose your stake. So you will not be playing bad because of economic incentives. That's the primary argument around this, that if you are losing your money, if you are losing your stake, then you might want to play fair in this game.
So you can manipulate it. It's difficult, I know, but it's also possible.
I mean, that's the primary reason why the primary purpose of TCRs getting so much traction is because in the blockchain, systems, you cannot manipulate it so easily. But you can definitely, there are definitely some things to address, like first of all, how do you bootstrap a TCR? when you create a new TCR, how will people know that this is a good one? Because you will have to put some items in the beginning. Then how do you stop? There will always be external factors when people will be forming groups, just like Bitcoin mining these things. And they will try to sway the community to vote in this or that side. But then there is always a check with respect to cryptography coming into picture, blind voting coming into picture, like this reveal length and all those things, to make sure that these things are constrained. But I agree with you, there are some challenges for sure, because when humans are involved in opinion, things become complicated. Yes.
How do you fix the price of the intrinsic token? I mean, there's this concept of bonding curve where, okay, then it's market maker, but if you don't have that type of underlying mechanic, how do you have to list all these intrinsic tokens on a marketplace?
Yes, the AdChain token is, as we know, is available for, and you do not have to fix the price of the token. You should not be. I mean, the price of the token is also part of the overall crypto economic activity. So you might not want to fix it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you discuss some alternatives to this concept? So one naive thought is simply to rank the list, for example, and then if you wanted a white list, a binary list, you can just sort, you can just make a cutoff, like everything over 5 stars, so 0 to 5 integer, everything over 3 stars gives you yes, or maybe you could also discuss bonding curves or ranking according to total stake or something like this.
Yes, I mean, it's more like, in my personal opinion, I have not done a study in this area where I can see some ranking algorithms or TCRs coming into picture. But in my opinion, I would say that's a little more complicated to, drive from the community. I mean, people are more, comfortable in deciding yes or no, instead of it should be 4 or 5 or it should be 6 or 7, things like that. So, but definitely there are alternatives to do that. Like one alternative is layered TCR, but then again, a TCR in itself is binary, but you actually climb the stages in different TCRs. So you are part of this TCR, then you are the part of the next layer TCR, and then you are the part of the next layer TCR, if I understood it correctly. But I mean, that's the concept. Okay, so what we are looking at, BigchainDB application, how it looks like, it actually looks exactly like any other decentralized application. This is the overall architecture diagram, and I actually created it in 5 minutes, so don't judge me on that, on the colors and stuff. But what we are looking at is there are users, and then we have the overall container of a decentralized application, which takes the BigchainDB driver, one of the BigchainDB drivers. We support 3 of them officially, and then there are other builds built by the community as well. So we support Java, JavaScript, and Python, and there is a Go implementation being developed by one of the community members. So we have 4 of them known drivers for BigchainDB, and the concept is that the driver will be included or imported inside the BigchainDB decentralized application. This can be a web app, this can be a mobile app, this can be absolutely anything which can incorporate the BigchainDB driver. And the driver basically helps in preparation of transactions, signs the transactions based on the keys passed by the user, and then it communicates with the BigchainDB server as well. So we have a very simple client and server architecture over here, where the client has the driver and the transaction preparation and signing and everything is happening on the client. And then we have the BigchainDB server, which is basically a network of BigchainDB nodes. So this is the overall communication process of a DApp communicating with BigchainDB server. It's exactly the same as any other DApp communicating with any other network. In case of Ethereum, instead of BigchainDB driver, you'll be using web3.js or web3.py and things like that. So the overall things that we want to look at when we are getting started with building BigchainDB applications are, first of all, you want to choose the driver as per your stack. They are all exactly the same. They provide the same functionality, but they have been implemented keeping in mind the best practices of that particular stack. So you might want to check that out. You might want to check out the transaction model of a BigchainDB transaction, because unlike in other systems, the BigchainDB transaction actually encapsulates a JSON object, which we call an asset, a data asset, and this asset can be anything. And I will show the power of this asset actually when we are talking about the TCR implementation. But the second most important thing is the transaction model. And then we need to look at how we are setting up the server. So just a side note on that is basically BigchainDB currently in its present form is suited for private permission blockchains. It is not a public network. And that's why the server setup becomes more important, than how many nodes you want to put, what these nodes should be, what voting power these nodes should have, because we are using Tendermint as a consensus mechanism. And then things around that, how do we monitor these nodes, what should be the maintenance and performance and other things. Do you want like caching or not? Do you want load balancing or not? And things like that come into picture when you are architecting an application. But these are primarily the overall things that you might want to consider when you are getting started with the application. If it is a simple proof of concept or MVP kind of thing, then you are good to go with just launching a node on your server or a VM or a local machine and connecting a simple React or Angular or just an HTML app with it by using the JavaScript driver. So even that works. So actually, before this, I wanted to show you some of the things that we have, some resources that we have created in the past few months as part of the team. So we have a repository completely dedicated towards examples and some usage. How do you basically get started with BigchainDB development? We generally, have this, habit of naming some of our repositories after Berlin bridges. So this one is Janowitz. There have been others as well. So what we have here is we have a boilerplate for an Angular application where you can see how Angular 6 or Angular 5 or previous versions can also connect to BigchainDB server using the driver. It has the blueprint of that particular model. Then we have a simple way of how you can actually prove authentication on BigchainDB, because if you are owner of an asset and you have signed it with your private key, then you can simply transfer it to yourself and you can prove that you are owner of that asset. So basically the system recognizes that you are authenticated, you are actually representing a particular public key. Then we have some specification around how decentralized identifiers can be stored on BigchainDB. The spec, it's kind of a little old at this moment, but we are in process of updating it to the latest version of the spec. We have some examples on JavaScript on how to use the JavaScript driver. We have some examples on Python driver, and we'll be putting some examples on Java driver as well. Actually, they are in a different branch and a pull request has been submitted already. So we have some examples on how to use the drivers. Over here, we have a lot of guides to get you started on BigchainDB. These are primarily covering all the concepts in that particular repository, and in addition to that, a lot more. They help you understand how an asset can be modeled, how data can be modeled in a BigchainDB asset, and they help you understand how basically this data can be stored and queried from the BigchainDB server directly. So we have a few of these guides over here, and they have received pretty good response from the community. So do check them out if you are getting started with BigchainDB development. And finally, we have some blog posts. I mean, I personally prefer to share this one on how BigchainDB works. We actually did that very recently. So primarily, and I will just give you a quick walkthrough on this. Like we saw the diagram which was there on application, how it connects with BigchainDB. It's exactly the same process, just defined in a more detailed way using a sequence diagram. So we have the app, which is the decentralized application, having the driver being imported in it. So the app will be passing simple JSON data to the driver, and driver will encapsulate into a transaction and sign it on the client side. and then it is being posted to the BigchainDB server, which internally then gives it to the Tendermint node of that particular BigchainDB server, and the consensus happens on this particular transaction. And finally, it is being stored on MongoDB inside the BigchainDB node. So a BigchainDB node primarily consists of three main components. One is the BigchainDB server in itself, which is the API server accepting all the requests and validating it. Then we have Tendermint, which is there for consensus purposes. And finally, we have MongoDB for state persistence and management. So there are primarily three modes in which you can send the transaction to a BigchainDB network. One is async mode, where consensus is not yet done, it is just inside the memory pool, async and sync modes. And then you have a commit mode where consensus has already happened and the transaction has been committed into the blockchain. So all of this particular diagram actually explain the async mode, where the response is returned for the async mode, where it is returned for the sync mode, and for the commit mode it is returned after everything that has been completed. So you get a HTTP response from this BigchainDB API once your transaction is committed into the blockchain. So that was more about getting started with BigchainDB applications. There were some resources, and when we publish these slides, I will put all these links into the slide notes so that it's easier for you to find out. But you can always reach out to us on our Gitter channel. If you are stuck with something on BigchainDB application development or server itself, we are always there looking for questions and helping answer them.